Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. Thanks to my sponsor this week, Scale Exercise Play-Along Tracks. I like Zoom. Zoom gives me my backup in case anything goes wrong with either side. And I like that it does it as two separate tracks. I know there's other tools that'll do that, but this is the one I feel safe with, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I used to use. There was a sound hack? I don't know. Anyway, I had a podcast that ran for almost 50 episodes, and then I got tired of it and moved over to YouTube.
That sounds like a potentially interesting topic.
I still actually like the idea of a podcast, and then podcasts sort of disappeared for a while, or not disappeared, but they weren't as in vogue, and now it's like raging. So you're on top.
It is raging. It's so funny because no one has become the because there's two. I guess there's the sort of the content creative consumption aspects of podcasts, and then there's also the social aspect. And no platform or service or app has taken advantage of it and turned it into this proprietary thing. No one has Facebooked or Spotify or Netflixed podcasts. It remains this open thing where I basically just publish an audio blog post.
Yeah.
So, a feed whenever I publish one of these, and then anyone can use any podcast app they want. And I think that's really awesome and great. But there are certainly, I wonder if it would be even more viral than I think to myself, most of the people who, other than people who find about the show from word of mouth, most of the people who I share it with, who see it, are Facebook is, as much as I don't like spending time there, it's where most of the people will be responsive to when I share something.
That's the age-old battle I have is that I still don't even have a Facebook account.
Really? You don't even have a Facebook account? I've assumed
I never have had one, and it's almost now a matter of pride because for years now, my daughter, who is she's a music teacher, she's just turned 30, and she is on Facebook, and she's sort of following my footsteps with her YouTube channel and making elementary general themed YouTube videos, and she's doing pretty well, but she keeps telling me how I'm really missing the boat both as a composer and as a YouTuber by not being on Facebook. And she's right. It's
hard because what I'm missing is it still feels very much like a game for me. Me, if I don't really play the game, but I do just the bare minimum of when I make something on the internet and I tell people through some various channels, I do get more attention when I do that.
Yeah.
But because that's one of the only thing, I don't really want to engage otherwise. Facebook sort of deprioritizes me in the algorithm. And then I also feel kind of yucky. I don't want to be engaged in that way. But Facebook is, I don't know. I mean, all the things you could say about it that are negative, I think it's in a pretty, I think a lot of people are just sort of hooked on it at this point. But every time I log into the feed, it's not even that I have moral issues. It's just that it's simply just not the utility that it used to be. I don't even see anything I want to see when I go to the feed. You have to have...
when I was still teaching in the Parkland School District, and there I also had a role coordinating our elementary band and strings program, that took up a lot of time. I get about a tenth of the emails that I used to get, even though I'm working at a college now. I just don't have the interaction with so many different disparate parties. So I used to feel like I just didn't have time for one more thing. I am on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn, which I don't think have as big a reach as Facebook, but they're still useful. But I just didn't have time for one more thing. Now I probably do have time for it, and it's almost a matter of pride that I can say I still haven't joined Facebook, and I just kind of like saying that because it just seems so weird that you're not on Facebook. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there. I check it every couple of days, and I might get back. I'm going through just a phase right now where I've been for the past year and a half, really, really disengaged with it. Instagram too. I do use Twitter. I mean, I have my social media apps are really very finely curated. I try to avoid algorithmic stuff, except for TikTok as an exception. We can get in that if you want to only. But in my most of my social media, actually, I don't consider TikTok really social media. It's more an entertainment platform, if in my opinion.
Yeah.
But for things where I'm gonna maybe interact, it's all very much very small, community-centered, internet-centered, communities of people that are not in my immediate network, people I've never met, but who might just and it's great because I have I solve a lot of my own technology problems and explore a lot of my own interests with people
Right.
I don't even know.
And that's why I stay on Twitter, because there's so many things that I first learned about on Twitter, like Note Flight or sound trap. There's just a lot of great tools. There's a lot of great people I've met. I've had commissions from people who first met me on Twitter, or I've been invited to guest conduct at different places around the United States from people who first encountered me on Twitter. So I keep doing it, but I think I'm kind of just. I'm not in. There's a guy I work with now at Carin University. His name's Daniel Bennett. He's a great jazz sax player, and he's from New York City. Takes the train down once a week to teach at Carin, and he is like the master of social media. And every week he's somewhere. He's like, this week he's in Denver. Last week, I think he was in Florida, but he's somehow always tweeting. And he's, scheduled tweets and things like that. But he's much more masterful at using it to promote his career, which I don't think that's a bad thing or anything. It's just, some people are better than others. And
yeah, there's definitely, I have no problem wanting other people do it, because I get it, like what it can do, and it is a tool. And I think more power to anyone who wants to. And I myself might come back to doing more of that later in my life. So I don't try to have a stance or a feeling on it, but like right now it just doesn't feel. The past couple of years have felt not really I haven't felt good being on there. So,
well, there's a lot of vitriolic stuff too that I just try to stay away from.
Right, but it was getting to where I just couldn't do it. And it would it's impossible to not linger on that stuff and get a little bit caught, not respond necessarily, but
yeah.
But I mean, they know, they're measuring how slowly you scroll through that stuff, and it would just keep giving me.
Right.
Where I'm I don't want that. I want.
Yep.
I like the idea that if I follow, this is what I like about Twitter is I don't, for example, we are not in the same immediate local network, but I can follow you, and now I've sort of curated. I'm doing the curating, not some machine. So you're by following you, now it's I get all of your ideas, and I've chosen to, and I think that's appealing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're getting into the weeds here already. I mean, do you?
Yeah, I know.
Is there anything before we get too deep into topical stuff? Do you feel like there's any kind of brief way of introducing yourself? Some of the different things going on in your career, musical education domains that you are currently juggling. There's lots you're doing.
Well, yeah. So I'll just say this, that I'm at a pivot in my life, really. And I've had several of these. I started out as a high school band director and pivoted to go back to grad school by taking an elementary job. And then I came back to the high school, and I did some adjunct teaching over the last 10 years. And after 36 years of full-time teaching, 35 of which were in the same school district, 1 year teaching theory composition at Temple University. But after 36 years of full-time teaching, I retired, and now I'm teaching as a 3/4 time professor at Carin University. Interestingly, I'm also working for them as an adjunct on top of my 3/4 time. I'm just about full-time. And I also work as an adjunct at Moravian University nearby in Bethlehem. So I'm writing some music. So I'm just as busy as I used to be, but it's a whole different, I'm just getting used to the rhythm. So in about a year, I'll probably have a better sense of, who I am professionally. But I felt very guilty this fall not going back to school and getting up at the same time on the same days and doing the kind of things I used to do for more than 3 decades. So it's an adjustment period for me right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost don't know how to even, since it is so new for you. It's there's lots of things I can ask about sort of the feeling or the connection that you have with people, or what you feel where you feel your role is in, but I don't know, maybe some of that is left undefined. It's tempting for me to therefore almost just ask you if there are any very practical change, are there new tools or workflows or routines that you're finding yourself in that are unique to this kind of job?
Well, I mean, I think every teacher is flexible to, I mean, we always, the pandemic really accentuated it, but we are always being thrown new tools to get used to using. And, during the course of my career in the Parkland School District, I must have used, maybe 4 different learning management systems. The most recent was Schoology. Carin uses a different one. It's built on Moodle, but it's called e-learning, but it's basically Moodle. So, and where I teach as an adjunct for University of the Arts and Moravian, they use Canvas. So, I mean, the staying flexible and learning new tools is that's just that's been a status quo, I think, for as long as I can remember, just constantly picking up new things. But what is different, and this is going to really irritate all of my higher ed friends, but having taught as an adjunct in higher ed for a long time, and having been a high school and middle school, I've worked at every level, really. I will say K-12 teaching is just a more demanding job than in my sense than university teaching. Now, there might be some kind of university teaching I haven't done, like maybe the marching band director or something, that because I know that was my hardest job in K-12. Public education was being over a high school band program, but I'm loving the lack of stress that I still dig the work. I'm really diving in, and I'm both creating classes and teaching classes, and getting to know a whole different type of student, and try to see where I fit in with the community at the college, and try to leave my mark or make a difference there, and all that. And that's just on the starting end of that. But I just constantly come home thinking, man, I just didn't have as much stress today. And some of the stress in our K-12 jobs is good stress. We manage maybe larger numbers in some cases, or bigger departments, or some of the festivals that you try to coordinate, or things like that. I don't have an ensemble right now, so for instance, that alone, just the fact that I'm not in charge of an ensemble, there's just a lot of moving parts with that kind of stuff. So. So kudos to our K-12 teachers who really, they work hard.
Well, I certainly have other questions about.
Yeah, let's go for it. We haven't talked much about technology, but
we certainly can. Well, I was going to ask you this too: if there's any follow up from a previous episode I've recorded, or any news, I like to try to address it. And I just thought I would kick things off here. I have not since I follow Apple pretty closely. I think you have some Apple things some computers, some Apple computing devices. I mean, last fall, they're always releasing lots of, mobile stuff in the fall. Did your wallet experience any pain over the past 2 months? Is it a phone year for you?
Sorry, what?
Is it a
Yes, I did. I'd been using an iPhone 7 for a while, and just over the summer upgraded. But I only upgraded to an iPhone 11, which I kind of regret doing because my daughter got, I think, a 13, and the camera is so much better. And when we go, we love touring historical places, especially. So when we're out touring a mansion, and she's taking these great close-up pictures of the cornice detail, and in a darker room. But the 11's way better than the 7. So,
There's one thing. There's one thing that I feel like is just that for the rest of our lives, the cameras will be better every year. And one of my things with when I'm deciding how frequently I'm going to upgrade is I have a 2.5-year-old, and 2.5-year-olds. Well, let's just say for me. He's sometimes is an enabler. He's not enabling me. It's just he's in my mind. I'm well, if I upgrade my phone again, right, I can take, then the pictures will be better.
In other words, you're using your kid as an excuse to feed your tech habit.
That's correct. That is correct. My technology habit. So I did. I got a new phone, and it's a good phone. I don't have that much to say about it other than the camera is very good. Are you an iPad user at all?
I have a very old, I think a 4th generation iPad. I haven't used it in a while. I used to use it a lot to read scores and sheet music. I'm a keyboard player as well, a little bit. And I was using Fourscore fairly frequently, and then my bifocal era began, and it's just the screen's too small, and I actually went back to hard copies of music, and because I haven't been able to afford the iPad Pro, maybe that would. But right now I'm saving up for the next laptop. I'm using right now I'm zooming you on an over 8-year-old MacBook Pro, which still is zippy, and I'm very happy with it. And I always say to people, where in the world are you ever going to have a computer that's 8 years old and you're still able to render video and do with Finale? I use sample libraries, and like, I just can't believe this computer is so strong at this many years out. But I am saving up for the next one. I'm waiting till is it the M2? Is that the new processor on the 13-inch?
I think so, yeah. So like the rumor is that probably before the year is over, there will be M2 MacBook Pros.
Right, and I want to see the 15 or 16-inch screen with that M2, and then I'll buy. So I'm kind of just saving some money and holding it until I see that, and then I'm going to go for it because I would like the bigger screen.
So speaking as an M1, I did go M1 Pro when those came out, and I think the screen is really nice. It's very bright, but that's the thing that I think about the least when I use it. I mostly just think about how like fast and snappy it is to use, and it runs. This is like a minimal thing, but there's a couple of iOS apps that I can run natively on it where those developers have not made a Mac app. It's just like they enabled it because it can run iOS apps.
Yeah,
and
right,
and that's
the direction they're heading.
It is. Yeah, I think that's an interesting developmental direction. So yeah, I was like really into trying to like make the iPad be this like powerhouse productivity machine. And then when the pandemic started, I was sitting at a desk. So I got really back into using the Mac a lot more. And then now like the iPad is really like just a classroom device. Like I read the scores, I annotate digital seating charts. But yeah, so like today I think the iPad that I have now is a 2018, which is for someone like me who I'm like a little bit reckless with being on like the bleeding edge of stuff. I mean, I really feel no desire to replace this with what was announced today. It's crazy fast.
Yeah, I would say that some people know me as somebody as someone who's a savvy technology user or something like that, whatever. But I would say my MO when it comes to technology is to use whatever is the quickest and simplest to do what I need to do. Right. I don't necessarily always use, like my YouTube videos, I've used Final Cut Pro, and I'm probably going to get it again. I stopped using it, but I just could crank them out a lot faster using an app called Camtasia. I was using ScreenFlow before that. But I tend to find like the thing that pushes the envelope far enough that I can do a lot really fast, but isn't like super steep learning curve. And you have to be an expert at it to still do some cool things with it. So, I mean, the only exception would be maybe Finale, because that's about as high end as notation software gets these days. So I mean, I'm a very good Finale user, but other than that, I'd been a Digital Performer user for many years, and then I went back to GarageBand to do almost all my DAW stuff. Now I use Logic Pro a little bit, but mostly I'm using GarageBand because it's just so fast, and I can do tons of stuff with it really quickly. So I'm not the guy to look at as the cutting edge. I'm the guy to look at as like, get it done fast and cheap.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, from a software perspective, I guess I meant that, but also just from the perspective of like having newer, more refreshed hardware is,
Yeah.
I don't know. The iPad is like, so the software is like not really taking that much advantage of the hardware, even the 4-year-old hardware. So it's not like my MacBook where around 5 years I can like feel it, like that it is not new anymore. iPad, I do feel that a little bit, but not in a super noticeable way for how I'm using it. It's interesting you mentioned ScreenFlow. I love that app so much. That's like, because I'd use some Final Cut, but ScreenFlow is, even if you're not doing the stuff that's like good for screencasting, like calling out what's being clicked on screen and like showing what's being typed on the keyboard, the zooming and all that, like it's just as a video editor, it's really like friendly.
Yep. And a similar app is Camtasia, which I like a little better. I haven't used ScreenFlow for about 2 years now, but that was sometime along the line I had to make a choice about what to get at Parkland High School for some of the video projects we were doing there, and we have it at Carin now. And I just noticed a lot of people in both industry and education are using that app a lot, and I think it accomplishes so much that's similar to what you can do in Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, but without all the deep learning curve. Now it doesn't do everything, so it's those are better if you're doing some high-end stuff, but for what I do, it's real fast and has a lot of power.
Well, we should talk about your YouTube channel. So your YouTube channel is good. I like it a lot. I think so there's like, I don't even know where to begin to explain to someone. I guess, well, you actually have this like nice introduction. You do like the introduction video thing where like YouTube will let you. How would you? And I can't like really recite it, so maybe you can, in your own words, sort of paraphrase that video, because you have a couple categories of like videos.
Yeah. My YouTube channel is an evolution. It's really what it is, because I started just back when our school district was really into blended learning, and I had some background with that. I'd done some online classes as an adjunct teacher for Temple, so I got on our blended learning committee, and they wanted volunteers in every department to create classes. So this is pre-pandemic when it wasn't even that big of a thing, but I said I'll be the guy for music, and I created like 50 some music theory videos and about 30 GarageBand videos for my music production class. And I basically created a lot of online content. I was just looking for the easiest place to host it so that kids could get it inside of our learning system. And that's what I decided to use YouTube. And it wasn't until I noticed that, a lot of people were looking at these that weren't my students. And I realized, oh, wow, that's a thing. So then I started supplementing it with, other things like finale reviews and things that were interesting to me, or just things that I knew I didn't teach a class like in college music history, but I still wanted to talk about Bach. So I would make a video about why Bach is such a genius, that kind of thing. And so it's really a sprawling, eclectic. I started using it to support my work as a composer too. I would put up videos of most of my published pieces that are with Alfred. They have their own concert band YouTube channel, but other pieces like chamber music that I've written and whatnot, I would put up there. So it's really an eclectic mishmash, but I like it. And I know that if you take these, there are a lot of YouTube classes on how to have a stronger channel and get more traffic, and they say you should be more focused. So I'm doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing by having like it being music technology, being composer stuff, and music history, and you name it. So it is what it is.
This is something, though, that coming back to our social media and algorithmic conversation from earlier, this is something that I would really like to see change about the way that social everything works on the internet, because in the same way that I want to curate my own community and have it be like, here's me, and like, how do I network out to just those people and topics that I'm interested in? I'm also, sorry, there's like a buzzing sound happening on my desk here. Let me see if I can fix that. In addition to wanting to network out to all those people, I myself also have more than one strand of who I am. And I like the idea of like I can currently find communities where those different parts of myself, my hobbies and interests, my profession, all of that stuff can sort of like reach out and be involved in community on the internet. But what I think that the algorithm of all these social media platforms could better do is allow someone like yourself, without having like 8 million YouTube accounts for each of these things, just say like, here I am, this is me, and do a better job of just like, if somebody else on the receiving end is not interested in your theory video, then don't show that, don't serve them that. Like, you're one person and you can kind of have these extensions of how you express yourself, and then everyone else is similarly getting. I think actually this is what I think TikTok does a really good job of, is say what you can say. Lots of things, criticisms about TikTok that are all very true, but like when I log on to it, it knows what I want to an extent where it's just like never ending, pretty like well tailored entertainment. And because it's so easy to make video on it, there's lots of it, and it does not have to be highly produced. It can be like just some person in their room being funny.
And I'll tell you, YouTube really values concision. And while I don't think I'm an especially long-winded person, when I make a video about one of the greatest composers who's ever lived, I find it hard to summarize that genius in less than like 15 minutes. So I'll make a 15-minute video on Bach that I'm like, this is awesome. I hope everybody will be as excited about Bach as I am when they watch this video. And then I'll see it only had 500 views. But then, I'll make one that's about a stupid little, or not stupid, but it's just a very simple little tech hack that I figured out, and I make a minute and a half video, and then you get thousands of views because YouTube favors being concise, and so that there's all these lessons to learn if you're interested in. And I balance that. I would love to have maybe a little bit bigger of an audience, but I also don't. I'm not obsessed with it.
Healthy outlook, I think. Yeah. So one thing about your videos that I really like, and I feel like there's a potential way that this could be taken the wrong way, so I hope you don't. But like your videos seem like when someone watches them or when I watch them, I think to myself like this is super engaging, but like it's produced to the extent that seems like feasible for like all the other things you have going on in your life. Like I don't get the feeling that you're like investing in like tons of camera equipment and like editing like lots of different channels. Like it seems like something that if I had a good idea and took the time that you did, like there would be some like I could probably piece together some workflows and get there. Like what are some of the workflows that you feel like help you to make like do just the amount that makes your videos engaging, but also like not be caught up in the like editing, like that part kind of fussiness. Do you know what I mean?
Well, like one thing that's really abundantly clear from in most of my videos, I don't have a special room that it's the same room that we're zooming from right now, which is where I write my music, and it's my office at home, which is cluttered with books, and like I don't have a great background. I do have a green screen that I can drop behind me, and every once in a while I'll do that if I want to appear at the top of the Statue of Liberty, or if I want to do something that I just think is fun. I have my kids got me for Christmas a few years ago a screen that I can put behind me, and I like doing that. It just takes a little time to set up. So I don't really obsess over. I have some lighting. I have a ring light that I'll use, but I don't have great lighting. So I am banking on just that my explanations are good enough that people will say, "Hey, he explained that really clearly and in a way that's helpful to me." That's kind of what I've tried to focus on. It's just the pedagogy or the teaching in the videos. But so I mentioned that I use Camtasia. I create a folder for the projects so that all the assets, whether it's the sound or the sound effects or motion backgrounds or whatever I'm using, they're all in the same folder. So that way I can keep the video tight. I don't have these sprawling things all over, and then you move a file and then your video doesn't work. So that's good to do. I use either my own music. A lot of my videos feature music that I've written. I don't usually credit myself, but I like just creating my own soundtracks and my own audio underscoring, or I'll use YouTube has a decent audio library. So if you're a content creator, if you have a YouTube channel, you have access to that, and there's hundreds of copyright-free things that you can use. I also use stuff I'll find at archive.org, the Internet Archives as well, or freesound.org. I use this microphone most of the time, which is an Audio-Technica USB mic. The AT2020 USB. I used to use a Snowball mic, but I think the Audio-Technica is better. I do have, a Focusrite interface and a nice condenser mic if I really wanted to do that. But I mostly just use this USB mic because it's always here for things like this. There's different things that are not Camtasia that I do use. Like, for instance, in all my music theory videos, it's like a virtual whiteboard where I'm writing on a staff. That's Edu Creations. It's kind of like Explain Everything or some of those other virtual whiteboard apps, but I like Edu Creations the way it feels, so I use that for that. So some of the have you seen my studio logo where it says Watson Studios? Yeah. That's actually out of iMovie. I just used the trailer and then just edited out the studio logo portion of the iMovie trailer. So I grabbed that from there, and a lot of the images and art that's associated with my videos and my channel is Canva. It's just created in Canva. One of the things I sort of happened on, I don't know when I found it, but background remove.bg, where you can take an image and it just is smart enough to know what is the image that you want and what is the background you want to remove. It's a free online tool. I use that a lot because it's quick and it does the job. So I that's just a little utility that's in there. But I usually write an outline, not a script, so that when I'm speaking to the camera, I don't have to be reading like there are teleprompter apps that you can use, and I've tried them and I've used them, but what I found works best for me is to just make a thumbnail outline, make sure it's a topic that I know well anyway, and then when I'm talking at the camera, it seems more like when I'm in my class. I have a lesson plan in the back of my mind, but I'm not actually just reading a script like many student teachers do when they student teach with me. So it's just, I think it's a good balance of being organized and not having to edit so much because I have a plan, but also being a little bit more natural and organic. So is that
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. You mentioned
I hope I'm answering the right question with all the things I've been talking about.
I'll always use pro fussy native apps that cost money. So it's always great to get someone to just dump a bunch of apps, because I think what your approach is just really I think it's just empowering. I think that a lot of teachers who are have busy lives and have ideas, here's a resource I might be able to make for my students. I think they could, and I think it's good to see how possible it is, especially with some of these tools that are free or web-based, like Canva. These are just not the kind of tools that I use, so I try to always get people who do use them to talk about them more, because those are some of the good ones. I agree with you.
I mean, Canva has so much in it. It has, video, motion backgrounds. If you're a teacher, if you're a K-12 teacher, you can get a free account that's at the pro level. So you get all the content, not just the free content. You get all that for free. So why wouldn't you go for it?
Yeah. They're great.
Yeah. There's another free service, Pixabay, that has a lot of good images and copyright-free images and video assets. Nothing as deep as Canva, but I'll go there sometimes as well. Pixabay.com.
I relate to the thing about the outline too, because I've done lately a couple of solo episodes of this show, and I'm the same way. I just write a top-level outline, and it's actually way easier to edit than having a guest, because I just it's so easy to cut myself. I'm not dealing with the other channel of audio, and I use Descript, but Soundtrap will also do this, where it'll Descript does it in a way that I like a little bit more. It's a little more intuitive and powerful, but basically both can create basically what appears to you as the text is all transcribed, and you can sort of delete it by the text. Descript makes it feel more like you're actually editing a Word document or a text file, which I prefer. But that it's really kind of a nice thing to get out, because what I've kind of finally trained myself to, if I mess up, just pause and then start that idea over, and then it's so easy to just crank out.
Sure. And in some videos, you're say I'll have a camera above my keyboard because I'm talking about a chord I'm playing, but you're also going to see the chord on the screen. So I have my phone is videotaping it, or videotaping. Boy, that sounds old. My phone is video recording at the same time as the camera on my laptop. So I'll do a little clap, right? A little transient, so that I can line up the peaks from those two waveforms, and that's how I sync.
Hey, my brain is not thinking in a straight line right now, so I'm going to just real quick, you made me think of something related to our earlier Apple hardware discussion and tech news. Yeah. Next week, iOS 16.1 is coming out for the iPad, and the new Mac OS is coming out, Ventura. And I know there's a handful of people using Macs listening to this, so I just thought this is something, if you love your Mac but you're just not keeping up with what's the latest thing happening. There's a handful of new features coming to the new Mac OS update, but one of the things that I will be updating on very early to get is a new feature where you basically just stick your iPhone on top of your Mac, and then it just becomes your webcam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's crazy. I've seen some video demos of it, and I don't think it quite. So first of all, MacBooks have pretty bad webcams in general. They're not good, but they make really, really good cameras in the iPhone, ridiculous good. And that's the thing that everybody has a smartphone. So I have this little Logitech thing that improves it a little bit. It gives me some more flexibility when I'm in my studio. But the demos I've seen of people using it, it's incredible how crisp because it's using the back facing camera of the iPhone, and you just
so the instance that I said where you need a camera on me, but I also need a camera on my keyboard, I'd still, if I only have one phone, I'd have to make a decision there, right?
But that's the thing, is you don't. So the iPhone has 3 camera lenses in it now, I think, depending on which model you have. But on certain models, I don't know if you need the 2 lens or the 3. I don't actually know the specifications of this, but on, let's just say, generally speaking, a newish iPhone, what it can do is it will take the wide-angle lens shot, which can see your desk and way more on the right and the left, up and down, all sort of around you. And what it'll do is it'll get your desk area and then crop and reorient it so that basically you are simultaneously getting a shot of your head and a little mini shot of what's happening on your desk at the same time from the same camera.
but the way I'm using a camera is I'm having the camera faced like that, and it's above my keyboard, which is over here. I just don't know that it would get that above the keyboard shot.
So
of the
there's certainly like
of the camera that's facing this.
There's a limit to it, but let's just say like right now, I'm just gonna lift my hands so you can see them. So like if I just like rest my hands on my desk, like they're on my keyboard right now, you would be able to see that. Like as if it was like an overhead.
Oh, I'm talking about my MIDI keyboard, the piano that's at 90 degreess. Like so, turn your body 90 degrees.
Okay, so
and then
it's like over
facing
here.
down.
Okay, it's not going to do that.
Right,
it's not going to do that.
Yeah, unless light can bend, I don't see how it would do that.
But I would have died to have had that in my home studio when I was teaching online a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was doing weird stuff with open broadcasting software to like sneak a little like digital MIDI keyboard like in the lower right corner of the screen every time I was teaching. And all right. Like what about, so when making musical related YouTube videos, are there times where you feel like timing, like you want to be really, specific about the timing of when things happen in the video to like the music? And if so, like, are there any tips for like making, because sometimes that can be tedious. I know like, in my general music class, we sometimes drum along to these videos where like a little Mario head will like bounce on top of the quarter notes and the eighth notes. That just seems like something like I understand conceptually how to make that video. But I don't know how to, there's like a fair amount of repetition involved in that, but I don't know.
So those are more like the videos that my daughter makes. Because I don't teach elementary general music, I don't have a lot of play in, clapping or bucket drumming or, bucket drumming to the Nutcracker kind of stuff. But that's the kind of stuff Abby does with her channel. And, it's funny because she actually's taken I teach some grad classes for music educators for University of the Arts, and she's taken 2 levels of the class is called Lights Action Learning Video and Music Education. And there's a level 1 and a level 2. And she's taken both of them. And she's my star pupil because she just loves making videos kind of like I do. So she does a lot of copy and paste. So once she gets, like, say she uses Epidemic Sound as her, remember I said I like to make a lot of my own audio and music backgrounds, but she'll go to Epidemic Sound. She has a subscription with them, and she'll get like a Christmas themed, track, and then she'll have to do a lot of placing images and doing animations where there's a bouncing ball or whatever. But once she gets it for one measure, just like in a DAW, you could copy and paste regions and then either option drag them or it just copy paste. She'll be able to do that for that section as long as it's going to use the same pattern. So like say in a Christmas themed or a winter holiday themed bucket drumming video, she's going to have 5 different patterns. She has to spend some time making the first measure of that pattern, then copy paste, right, and then the second measure and so forth. So that's I guess the only there's a certain amount of tedium that lining things up, but then there's a lot of copying and pasting.
Yeah, for some reason it doesn't. The techniques you're describing don't seem tedious. Like I'm comfortable with them in a DAW, but for some reason in video, I feel like it seems more. I don't know. I'm just probably less comfortable in a video editor.
And that's one of the reasons I turned away from iMovie is iMovie stopped being like linear, like Camtasia and ScreenFlow and Final Cut. It stopped being linear where it was just this one long thing. It started being like this, palettes of, and I think they did that to make it less daunting and easier, but I'm just a linear guy, I guess. So, and then other apps like Camtasia and ScreenFlow started doing some things that iMovie wasn't doing. So as much as I liked iMovie early on, I ended up, moving away from it.
Cool. I love it. Can I ask you some questions about composing?
Absolutely.
I have kind of like one thing that's just been on my mind. It's been like a focal point of my teaching career. I just want to get lots of takes on this because like I think since like post-COVID, I teach at Ellicott Mills Middle School. We have 4 bands, and I teach our wind ensemble and I teach our concert band, which is our students who have the least amount of experience in a large ensemble setting. And I'm just trying to find ways to demystify concert literature for them and make it as easy as possible to approach it with a good sound, a good ensemble musicianship, like good blend, good balance. So I'm always trying to find easier music. I'm always trying to find musical compositions and works that are like, in one way or another, like sort of adaptable to the way that I teach. Like, do you have any young? I guess I just first ask like more specifically. Do you have any young ensemble, like absolute beginner works that you're really proud of that you want to shout out or recommend for people in this situation?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I write at every level, and because I've worked also at every level, and most recently as an elementary, my last 2 decades in Park School District were as an elementary band teacher and coordinator of a fairly large department. Like we had 6 staff and 900 kids in 9 buildings. So I worked with a lot of young, first and second year players, and I don't know why I was so late to the game. I have a DMA in composition. I was teaching for about 15 years before I wrote my first piece for one of my kids. Like, why didn't I write for my own students? It took me forever to realize that's a smart thing to do, right? You know the playing abilities of your kids better than anybody. So so many of those pieces, like right now, thinking about the holidays coming up, my best-selling winter holiday piece is a piece called "At the Feast of Stephen," and it's an easy grade 1. It's not it's a maybe right in the wheelhouse grade 1, but it's not a hard. It doesn't push the envelope of grade 1 at all, and it's fun to play. The beginning and the ending are just like beginning band easy, and then the middle of it has a little bit of syncopation, but it's just fun to play. And I wrote that for my first year band kids. So more recently, though, the way the pandemic has left us all, it's the kind of thing I would do with my second year band kids. But so that's At the Feast of Stephen would be a great grade one. A piece I wrote called "Walkin' Cool" was the very first piece I ever got published by Alfred, and it's still one of my best selling at grade 1. Kind of reminds you of like a Henry Mancini kind of groove, but so "Walkin' Cool" is again, it's the kind of thing that features low brass, but the low brass only play in 1, 4, and 6. I think are the only positions they use. So it's a fair. That's not true. I guess there's a little bit of third position too, but it's focused and shows off your low brass, so that it won't be hard for them to learn it, and everybody else has some fun too. So. Just at www.scottwatsonmusic.com. That's my website. So if you go to scottwatsonmusic.com and click on compositions, you'll see I have them listed by grade level, and there's quite a few grade 1s in that lot. So yeah,
cool. You've done quite a lot of honor ensemble directing.
It's interesting because I was doing a lot of that crescendoed right up to 2019, right before the pandemic. I was turning down gigs because you can only take so many days off a year as a teacher. But then as the pandemic sort of defrosted, I got to do a couple. Last year I did an honor band. A middle school county honor band in North Carolina, and then a regional high school band in Mississippi. But this year, actually, I don't have any honor band. I mean, I get asked to guest conduct my own music. So like if I have a commission and they want me to come out, like for instance, I'm going out to the Pittsburgh area in the spring to do like a 2-day residency with all the bands, elementary, intermediate, and high school, in a school district that's commissioned me to write a piece. So that kind of conducting I have on my schedule for this year. But this year it's interesting. I thought, now that I'm at a college, I have a little bit more flexibility. They want to send you out, right? Colleges are happy to send you out and spread their name. So I now have the availability more than I ever have. But so far, I'm doing just the kind of guest conducting of my own works and rehearsing and clinicking my own work. So if any of your listeners want to have me out to do a festival, I have some room in my schedule in the spring.
All right, good to know. Yeah, I as someone who has, so I've been co-directing our middle school GT honor band with Lori Schwartz-Reichel for the past handful of years here, and
you're down in Maryland, right?
Right. Yeah. And
yes. Okay.
And so as I'm doing it, like some of the things that are so important to me in teaching an ensemble are like really like slow burn, long term goals, like ear training and like tone production and like balance, things that you really just need so much repetition in everyday band. To develop a sound that's your band's sound and where everyone is listening. And that's like so totally like out the window for like a 1 week kind of like one and done thing. I mean, are there, in your experience working with lots of different groups all over, like, do you feel like there are any things that you can suggest that maybe are like, that distinguish your pedagogy when you're in front of an honor group, like things you focus on or things you try to ensure that kids experience while you're there, Because you're not going to fix all the tone problems.
Well, this is a multifaceted question, and I promise I'll give you at the end of it a very practical list of things you can do, like if you only have a day or 2 days, right? But let me start here by saying that a couple of years ago I taught a class up at Central Connecticut State University. It was a band pedagogy class, and I team taught it with Lauren Reynolds. Lauren is now at University of Delaware. She's the wind ensemble director there, but at the time she was the director of bands at Central Connecticut State. And I remember she started the class by asking everybody whether you were a teacher whose topic happened to be music, or are you a music teacher? And I thought that was a great way of saying, what's more important, the whole person or just their musician part of them? And I'm definitely one of those whole person people. And I like to tell stories, and I like to teach values lessons and things like that. And I like the idea that band is and all ensemble music is a great place to imbue those things. So I would say if there's something that sets apart my guest conducting is that I try to, as quickly as I can, have a relational connection with the kids and share with them, who I am and what's so great about music and what are some of the lessons it can teach us and how can it make us, play better. So the interesting thing is a couple of years ago, I got asked to do this all New England honor band by Mark Stickney, who was up at Plymouth State University at the time. And he said, Scott, there's going to be 2 bands. You'll be directing one, and Jack Stamp will be conducting the other. Now, Jack Stamp is like a hero of mine. He is like so good at that. He's like one of the best conductors of wind and percussion music on the planet, and a great composer too. And I had never, at the time, done a high school honor band. So here I'm going to be going up, rehearsing in a room next to Jack Stamp. And I just felt so, that imposter syndrome thing. So I asked a friend of mine who's done a lot of district and state honor bands, if he could have breakfast with me. And I wanted to pick his brain on what I could do so I would do a good job. The first thing he said to me is, Scott, nobody asks you to do these things because you're such a great conductor. They're asking you because you're a composer, and they know you're a good teacher too. So just tell your stories, because he knows I like to talk. He said, just tell your stories, teach your lessons, pick a piece of yours to put on the program, and they'll be very happy. And that's exactly what ended up being. I think the band sounded great, and I was very proud of how they sounded next to Jack's band. And Jack was super gracious, and he's a very accessible guy. But that's I think what I'm about is. So here's the thing. But because I do get asked to, or at least I had been asked to do a lot of these, I sort of started getting an idea that there were certain things, if I really lean into, are going to instantly make the band sound better. And some other things are exactly like you're talking about. They're long burns, like doing certain warm-up routines. You don't have a chance to build into, week after week after week of, there's always tomorrow and we're going to do this warm-up and we're going to grow in it. So I had to think of what if I have to focus in on just a couple things in a 1 day or 2 day festival, what do I think I get the most mileage out of? And I found that, in fact, I wrote an article for Alfred's blog about it. I've presented as an Alfred clinician on it. I'm going to be doing that later this month for a PMEA in-service. I call it 3 game changers for improving, for getting a mature band sound. So the first is listening. Is you just talk to the kids. I'll ask them a question like, how do you know if you made a mistake? And they'll say, well, because it sounded wrong. And I'll say, well, how did you know it sounded wrong? Well, and I just try to get them to ultimately say, because I was listening. And the point I try to make is that most bands, most participants in ensemble music only do 50% of what they're supposed to do. That is that they put sound out into the room. But there's 50% of this whole enterprise should be drinking back that sound into your ears, making intelligent, discerning decisions about what does it sound like, and then making adjustments based on what you hear. So I just try to get them to buy into so I'll ask questions like, hey, when we get to this fermata and I cut off, I want you to just be really quiet. And then I want you to raise your hand and tell me, what's the last sound you heard? Was it a trumpet sound? Was it an alto sax sound? I'll just try to get them to really focus on what they're hearing. And then, they'll at first they'll cut off and they're like, I don't know, it sounded pretty good. No, listen again. And then we do it and they're like, oh yeah, I heard a drum. There was a drum. It was just a little, yep, that's exactly right. And so once you get them to listen to themselves, it just makes them play better. And you don't have to put your finger on exactly what they do better, although sometimes you can, right? Like sometimes you can say, the reason the percussion we're rushing doing was because they couldn't hear the rest of the band because they were playing so loud back there, right? So you get them to play a little softer and listen to the rest of the band. But once they hear the pace that the rest of the band is doing, they actually stay in time with the rest of the band and they play better. So, and the balance ends up being better. And it just fixes so much things just to talk about listening and do a couple kind of listening analysis questions. So that's one thing, listening. Second thing is phrasing. Phrasing is so easy to fix. It's just the idea that they play complete musical thoughts rather than choppy thoughts. And I can, if it's a younger band, I'll talk to them like, "Hi, everybody. How are you?" And I'll say, "What was so weird about that? It sounded like you had a stroke, Dr. Watts." Yeah, well, it was because I was talking choppy. I wasn't talking incomplete. So if it's an older band, we'll just talk about how if you go to see the Philadelphia Orchestra, they don't play, 10 pieces that are 3 minutes long. They'll play one piece that's 18 minutes long and then another piece that's 25 minutes. In other words, the more mature you get, the longer your musical strokes are. So once you get a band to play longer phrases, man, does that transform how mature they sound. They sound so much more sophisticated. The third thing, oh, by the way, long tone contests are a great way to do that. You'll have everybody stand up, play a note as long as they can, the last one standing, all that kind of stuff. And you time them and you're like, man, you held that for like 35 seconds, and yet you can't play 2 measures in a row without breathing? Come on, So again, with younger bands, they'll have fun with that. But anyway, the third thing would be intonation. Now, that is a sophisticated topic that even we are still, as teachers, we're just still just getting better at discerning ears. But you can plant seeds, and there's a whole series of things you can go through, whether it's word pictures or using a tuner or tuning from the bottom up or having people sing and hold a drone tone, or my favorite thing is just having one person play and match the tuner, then put the tuner away, then have the second person just melt into that sound. First person drops away. Now you get the third person in, and you can just you probably don't have time to do it around the whole band, but you can do it in a section, and then you can have sections do that on their own. But even just the idea of paying attention to intonation and having kids talking about intonation and just make guesses in band, that sort of circles back to the listening thing. It just gets them on that journey of playing in tune, and that'll make the band sound better. So those are my 3 game changers that I usually focus on those 3 in a big way, in addition to all the other stuff that we do.
Yeah, it's actually really helpful and practical. Intonation and balance are like 2 of the hardest ones for me. The time that we have, it's always tough because we do a lot of drone work at Ellicott Mills. We listen and we sing and we and those are building. I mean, you can't really like train ears in a short time, but you absolutely can make a group of students listen more than they were when they walked in the door.
Well, what's funny is when you ask a kid to make a guess, if they guess wrong, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? You'll sound worse. Then you went the wrong way, right?
Right, exactly.
But then what's funny is that there are some people that when you ask them to move their slide, they'll say, "What do you mean?" They say, "I can't move it." You'll go back and you try to move it for them, and you realize this thing we need some WD-40. This thing has never been moved in its entire, Then you realize like, okay, all right, take it back a step. That's all right. Maybe at break we can get that. But yeah, people come with all sorts of different, backgrounds and situations.
Yeah, right on. Okay, cool, good stuff. We talked a little bit about your favorite tech workflows for video editing, a little bit composition. You're a Finale user. Do you have any I mean, you certainly, if you have any other compositional related tech workflows, I'd love to hear about them, but also like productivity. Like you said, you do some script writing. Are there things you use to help wrangle task management and manage all these different domains of your life?
Well, let me just touch on the Finale thing because I've used Finale has its own software sound set, which is it's okay. Then they for a long time have had a relationship with Garriton. Now they own Garriton, and they use the Finale Garriton subset that comes with. So those are decent samples. And there was a time where I actually bought the whole Garriton concert band sample library, and I was using that, and I was kind of happy with it. But more recently, and that's about 3 years now, I've been using Note Performer. The current version is Note Performer 3. For $120, you cannot beat the sound of those samples. So if you're a Finale user and you want to up your playback game, And it's not hard to install, and they're very intuitive. You don't have to really tell it very much. It'll roll your rolls, it'll mute your mutes, and things like that. Note Performer 3 would be. And I taught a class this summer for UArts, composing and arranging for school band. And a couple of the people in the class didn't know about it, and they got it. They just downloaded it during the class and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't have this. So it's a great. And then the other thing is, when I send a mock-up to Alfred, I like to put my best foot forward and sound as good as I can. So what I'll usually do is I'll have two versions of the score that I'm going to turn into them, and then the version that, say, I delete all the cymbal rolls and things that I can actually do better with a microphone and real instruments. And I actually have like a little folder of, gong hits and things that I've recorded over the years. And I'll actually use a DAW. I'll export the audio from Finale, minus the things that I think I can do a better job of, and then I'll just put those in a DAW and send that mock-up of my piece. And I'm really happy with it because there are some great samples, but not everything like cymbal rolls don't tend to be as good. So that's sort of my little trick with getting good synth realizations of your Finale work.
That's a good one.
On productivity, I wouldn't say I'm, going to be the most savvy person that has some kind of unusual app. I use Google Apps to death. I use all the things like calendar, docs, sheets, forms, sites. My website is a Google site. Slides for a lot. I used to use Keynote, and I still do use Keynote a lot, and I love Keynote, but I just wanted to go in the cloud with most of my prezos. So I've been slowly converting some of my sessions that I do when I go out as a clinician. I've been slowly converting them over to Google Slides, and I'll probably keep doing that, even though I still like, nothing looks as sexy as Keynote. But
I do. Yeah, Keynote would probably be the hardest of the Apple iWork stuff for me to... It's the one I actually use the least, even though I do a fair amount of presenting. It's not like open, it's like when I'm doing a presentation or editing, something like I swear by it, but it's like, but I would say numbers and pages are open on my computer all the time. But still, I think Keynote is the one that I would not want to give up. The Google stuff is definitely, it's sort of definitely it's taken over because it fits in that category of how you describe some of your video editing tools. Like it's really like simple and good enough for a lot of things you might need. Yeah, good. Okay. I'm not going to evangelize personal knowledge management apps on this episode. I decided before we started recording.
No, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I know I should be interviewing you if I wanted to know about what's the best productivity stuff. I mean, didn't you say in a recent one of your episodes that you even like time how long it takes you to do certain things? And, and you
I stopped when the school. You know what? I do that for a lot of freelance work and side stuff. But when the school year starts, I'm like back and forth on this app Timery, which is really good. I like to know. It's like how much time am I really spent? Like I have family. It's like how much time am I spending outside of my busy private teaching and like public school teaching schedule, like editing this show and. It's just funny. I think also from the perspective of knowing like what to commit to in life, or how to manage yourself. Like there's sometimes things take a lot less time than one might assume, and then sometimes they take way more. And my brain is like I have this kind of I don't know. I don't always stay very focused or on task, and then sometimes I get hyper focused, and then I'm...
Well, when I was a young man, one of my summer jobs was house painter. I worked for a painting contractor, and it was all about estimating. These guys would go out and they'd look at a house and count the number of windows, and they'd come up with a price. And if they did a good job estimating, the painter would make a lot of money. He was getting paid thousands of dollars, and it was only costing him a couple hundred, right, for the materials and labor. But if he estimated it wrong, he was losing a lot of money. So I think there's a lot of places in life where being able to make a good estimate about whether it's worth it. Like, for instance, I just did my big summer project, and it took me until just literally a couple weeks ago. I just finished it. I wrapped it, but I'm scoring. I had to score a 24-minute Buster Keaton silent film. Like I've never written a commission that was that much music in. And just coming up. I remember going out to breakfast with the client and saying to him, "Just brace yourself, because I'm going to tell you what this is going to cost, and it's going to make your jaw drop. But then if you think about it, like, here's what a 5-minute band piece would have cost you. You're actually getting a great deal." And in the end, when I turned over the this, and he sort of met with me as the piece was being written, and we at intervals, he was going over he realized, like, Scott, man, you are writing a what load of like, he got it, and he got a great deal, by the way, but it was still, I had to estimate like how long it would take me, and I was probably a little under in the estimate. It took me a little bit longer, just because of syncing, and I had to solve some problems about syncing the music and having a click track for the conductor and things like that. Anyway, but if you can estimate a project, you can maximize your profit.
Yeah, for sure. Timery, if I didn't say it, is the one I use for that.
Timery.
And because I keep coming back to this starting conversation of Apple news, iOS 16.1 has a very cool new feature that's going to come out when it's released next week, which is called Live Activities. And it will be like, do you know how like some apps notify you like constantly, like DoorDash or like Uber, or there's like some apps where it's helpful to know the status of something happening in that app, but you don't like want it in your way. It's like this new type of notification that instead of pinging you lots, it just permanently is visible on your lock screen. And Timery is going to be releasing a little thing that'll like always, when you look at your phone, even if it's just sort of ambiently showing you your picture of your kid, it'll show you which timer is running and how long. And that might get me to like try to like maybe get back into using it this school year. Cool. Well, speaking of apps that I like in productivity workflows, I always do segments, usually music tech tip and an app pick of the week from me and the guest.
Well, so one of the classes I'm teaching at Carin is orchestration, and the class I'm teaching at Moravian is advanced orchestration. So I've been listening to a lot of and looking at a lot of scores that highlight certain traits of instruments, and two that I just am in love with is Samuel Barber's Overture to School for Scandal. He wrote it when he was 18 years old, a freshman at Curtis, I believe, and just when you hear this awesome piece of music, which is sort of like, I honestly think it's a partner piece to Candide, the Bernstein Overture to Candide. There's so much in common. The two pieces have a lot in common. I believe Bernstein was inspired by Barber, not the other way around. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But it's a great, awesome tour de force for orchestra, and it has so many lessons. I tell my students that great music teaches itself. In other words, I've listened to School for Scandal probably 100 times, and every time I hear it, I learn something new because it's such great music if you just pay attention. Kind of like, if you drive your car down a street many times, but then one time you decide to either ride your bike or walk, you're going to notice things about that road that you didn't, that little flower by the mailbox or whatever. Well, if you pay attention to great music, it just teaches you. You don't even need a teacher. And School for Scandal is definitely one of those pieces if you've never checked it out. The other one is Stravinsky's Octet for 8 wind instruments, and that really informed my writing of that Buster Keaton film, because bassoon was one of the instruments that's in the ensemble that I'm writing for. It's an 18-piece theater orchestra, and Stravinsky's writing gave me permission to write some really florid, decorative bassoon parts, because man, there is some killer bassoon parts in this octet, and it's just a great piece too. So those are the two that I've been listening to and studying and sharing with my students recently.
Awesome. I'm going to go in a very different direction. Do you do any prog? Any prog rock?
No.
Really, really good. So, like, how do I describe this particular kind of prog rock? So the group is called Arc Echo. String teacher in my district turned me on to them, and I feel like some of a lot of the progressive music is like sort of taking more from, like, not just from like metal and maybe some of the like technical aspects of like jazz, but it's more like now taking from pop too. I don't know. It's like for something that has as many like metric modulations and like strange polyrhythms as this record does, it's very catchy to listen to. It's just like very rhythmically dense. And I shouldn't even say odd time signatures, because most of the tracks are like do that thing where it's like really the tune is in 4 if you don't count it weird. It's just that like they're like accenting things way all over the beat. And they just dial in the guitar tone and the drum. They get everything to have that kind of like blend that sometimes hard rock music can have, where it's like the guitar tone and bass and drums all sort of like when they hit it once, it just sort of sounds like one thing. But then they're just doing a lot harmonically and rhythmically. it's very like kind of crisp, snappy, catchy record with a lot of notes, but a lot of re-listening also.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised I haven't heard of that, because I do a project with I used to do it with my high school music production students. I'm doing it with my college music ed tech class, where they have to create basically a podcast and tell me about music that they like. I call it My Favorite Things. And that's where I find out about, Icelandic pop music and theremin concertos and Yngwie Malmsteen's guitar playing and things that I normally would not encounter. So I'm surprised prog rock hasn't appeared on the radar of one of those projects.
Yeah, interesting. And the album is, by the way, called "You Won't Believe What Happens Next," and it is not new. It is from 2019. So it's kind of new to me. I was sleeping. Yeah. I know the group, but I didn't know this record existed, so I was sleeping on it until earlier this fall.
Prog. Why is it called? Is prog for progressive rock?
Progressive rock, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I have other prog rock I'd probably recommend over this, had I known that you didn't listen to a ton of it, but that's fine. Arc Echo is pretty good. I like them. I literally like this group, Wayne. It's actually just a guy, and he plays like very like virtuosic guitar shredding, but also like does a lot of his own drum programming. A lot of these people program their own drums. Like a lot of them have like digital drum set stuff, but like that's very where you can tell these guitarists have like really like studied what metal drummers do, like to where they get the phrasing and the like. The technique like dialed in just right, but you can tell if you like, are really listening. It's like all stuff that like, is playable. But then he like plays the piano on the records too, and does some like synth sequencing and plays the bass. It just like does everything, and it's
right.
It's a real trip. Some of my high school private students who listen to this stuff are really into that too. So I always feel like proud when I can like turn one of my students on to something, and they come back the next week like, I just listened to every record by Wayne, and that was like so cool, man. Thanks. I feel very cool.
That hasn't happened to me for a while, where I could actually I mean, it's usually recently it's been music of anime that kids are telling me all about, and I was like, I didn't even know that existed, but that's really hot right now.
Yeah. App? Do we want to do an app?
Well, I mentioned Note Performer, and I also mentioned Camtasia as part of our. I would say those two would be if people don't know about those and they're looking either for a video editor or a sample library. Those are a bang for the buck. Two really, really good apps in their category. So I'll stick with those two.
Yeah, I'm gonna tie. That's good. That's really good. And I'm gonna tie my app pick to my tech tip, because it's sort of like a little mini workflow I've got going on, but it is an app and I think I might have even mentioned it before for this segment before. The app is called AnyTune. It's one of a handful of these apps where you dump an MP3 into it, and then you can control the tempo and the pitch independently of one another. Just a really simple audio player. Mm-hmm. You can loop stuff. It's, I think these kinds of apps are typically like imagining some
like amazing slowdowners like that too.
Exactly correct. Yeah, it's just a little bit. I think it's like a little bit better designed and like feels more Mac native and is easier to interact with, and has a couple more power tools. So I'm like, this is just one of 100 use cases for it that I have weekly. But like right now we're in the general music classroom. We're working out of these modern band method books where it's like a bunch of pop songs, but we learn them all on piano, and then we learn them all on guitar, and then bass, and then drum set, and then we come together as a little mini band. That's the kind of idea of the modern band methods. And some it has like a play along CD, because like sometimes they put the pop songs in keys that are easier or like better in the sequence of the music. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, like something about like I think it's beneficial to like hear these songs, the feel and the style of these songs. So I want my students to play along to the songs, but of course they've like changed these keys. So my workflow actually uses AnyTune, but also another app called Downy, which is like an app that you click it puts a little tool like in your web browser. It adds a little extension, and you click it, and then it just takes whatever video or audio is on that website and does its best to sort of like grab it and download it to your downloads folder. And so my workflow is when we have a song and it's like a half step or a whole step off from the original, I find it, click the button in Downy, and then I drag it out of my downloads folder into AnyTune, and then I up, down, or arrow it a couple times, and then we can kind of like play with the feel of some of these songs. It's a nice little workflow, because there's just like like if you want to like transcribe a solo as a jazz musician, or like try to learn a solo or play along, or even just what I do with my students. Sometimes I'll have my private students drum along to a pop song instead of a metronome. It's just more fun. And if the tempo is not quite right for us, just click it, do 1.25 instead of 1.0 speed.
No, I've been doing similar things. It's good to know about those apps. So what was the app again?
So AnyTune is the slowdowner one.
AnyTune.
And then Downy is Downy is Mac only, I think.
There's a fair amount of those that you can take, if you're going to take a YouTube video or things like that. Is that what you're talking about? Like a freeware
yes.
or...
Yeah. There's weird, sketchy websites. There's also actually the best one that I've used that is not paid, because Downy is nice and easy. It's just like a premium app, really nicely built, and it couldn't be easier to use. But there's a really good thing you can actually run from the command line called YouTube DL. But if you don't want to like be a computer nerd and like have the terminal open, somebody has made an app. I think it's called VIDL. Where it's actually like an app you would just like download and install on your computer, which is using that. It's doing that, but like without you having to actually open the terminal. You just like drag a YouTube link into it, and it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for my tech tip of the week, I wanted to share some DAW hacks. I mentioned a couple already, but so if you're trying to get your DAW to sound great, if you're trying to get your music productions to sound great, I'll give you a couple. First of all, I always say put your best foot forward and hide your warts. So there are some samples in, whether you're using Logic or whatever, Pro Tools or GarageBand, there's some samples that are great, like the Steinway Grand is great. And there's some samples that sound like Barney. They're just, terrible brass samples. So if you have to use those, hide them, and put those other ones forward in the mix. But the real secret is to have at least one real instrument. So when I encourage people to have their, to do a multi-track project, we try to get, a real guitar player or a real clarinet player or a real vocalist. If you have at least one real instrument in your mix, it always ups the production value. Also, panning is something real simple that a lot of people don't do. So the idea that they would have a stereo image, instead of having like everybody pan center, imagine a jazz band or a jazz combo where the piano player is in the center of the stage and then the drum set is on top of the lid of the piano and the bass player is on the drummer's shoulders and the guitar player, they're all pan center, right? But if you spread them out, if you pan some a little off the side, it really opens up your stereo image. And then for anything that you set up a mic and record, the magic three are reverb, EQ, and compression. Sweeten up your sound with a little reverb, shape the spectral content with EQ, and put some compression to give a little resonance. Those three, you can get some good stuff going if you just do all the things I just mentioned in the same production. You can have your DAW stuff sounding pretty good. So they're my quick DAW hacks.
Those are really good ones, and they're things that I feel like you can take them as far as your ears are trained to sort of tell you to take them, but they are also not like incredibly complex ideas to understand.
Oh, and one more I forgot to say, and that is that I made a video last year that I got a lot of great comments from, and that is that one thing that GarageBand can't do that Logic can do, at least natively, is it can't do meter change. But I created a hack where you just decide what all the meter changes are, create a MIDI map in something like Finale or any other app that you're using that does do meter change. Like, so say you have a piece that's like 4478, 4424, 4458. You export from you typeset just the empty measures in Finale, export it as a MIDI map, not just as a MIDI file, but as a MIDI map. That's one of the options that you can choose when you export from Finale. You just drag and drop that into the track window of GarageBand, and all of a sudden it just looks like Logic. You got all your meter changes in there. So GarageBand can do meter change with that little hack.
That is very good. I did not know that. I actually did not know that GarageBand could not do meter change. I just assumed it was up in the track menu.
That's the biggest thing that separates it from Logic. I mean, there's a lot of stuff hidden underneath the surface. If you look under the hood of GarageBand, there's a lot of logic there. But that's one thing that just isn't there.
Yeah. Okay. I just opened up GarageBand to prove it to myself that it wasn't there. You were right. That's crazy. Oh my. Well, let me just say that, I gotta go to work tomorrow at like 7:30 in the morning. Yeah. I hope we can do this again soon. This was so long overdue. I'm sure there's lots to talk about. I mean, I didn't even mention. Maybe it would have made sense for. I mean, not that anyone would know about this, but in the line with like the whole honor band discussion. I mean, we were supposed to meet a couple of years ago at the Regional Repertory Wind Ensemble, which is a group that Lori, who's been on this show and who I co-direct the honor band here with in Howard County. Like, this is a group that for a long time
I love Lori.
We've worked with.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, we've worked with this group. She's been the director of it for a number of years, and like you were gonna be one of the guest conductors that year, and then of course COVID.
Right.
So. And since probably before then, I thought that you should come on the show. So it's great to like have you here. We will have to do it again soon.
No, I've really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed all your other episodes. The ones I've listened to are great. So thanks for having me.
Today, I would like to introduce you to my scale exercise play-along tracks with trap beats, available for sale at robbieburns.com. These trap beat play-alongs include over 72 audio recordings, each of which includes a count-off, a trap beat at 70 beats per minute, and a tuning drone playing both the tonic and each note of the scale in just intonation, so your ensemble can learn to play in tune, develop steady, sustained tone, and blend with other sounds. These drones are stacked over top engaging trap beats that help students to practice at slower tempos while developing steadiness of time and a better concept of how the beat is subdivided. The scale exercises include whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, scale and thirds, and a mini scale with an arpeggio at the end in all 12 keys. I've also included 3 speed variations of a Remington exercise, so band ensembles can work on their favorite tone and technical exercises, whether they be from a method book or of your own invention. The tracks are $15, but for $40, you can get the stems to the tracks in Logic Pro and GarageBand format, so that you can do things like speed them up and slow them down, change the pitch, add your own accompaniment, take out my voice and add your own,
and 2 and 3 and go,
or even sequence the tracks together to completely automate your ensemble warm-up. These tracks are perfect for running through your Google Meet, Zoom, or virtual teaching platform of choice, or for running through the loudspeakers at the beginning of your in-person rehearsal. Check them out now at robbieburns.com/store. I'm Robbie Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for the episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in the podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review this show in the podcast app. It absolutely helps. It'll take a second and just a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about it. Learn more about my music and teaching career at robbieburns.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robbie Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be, and I hope to connect with you soon. Thanks to this week's sponsor, Scale Exercise Play Along Tracks. Be sure to check it out, and see you next time.